One of my favorite things to do each month is look at the next month and look at the games and see what I think of them. August has been some of the best of times and worst of times for a gamer, a month that's seen the excellence of Fast and Furious Crossroads. But seriously, it's also seen Microsoft Flight Sim and Peaky Blinders. I might be joking about that last one. We're going to look at August games for 2023. Check out my previews for some of the games coming out this month, my review and preview list. Subscribe and hit the notify all button if you can. It helps let YouTube know you like them list videos. Number 1, Gourd, August 17th. So in some ways, this is a one-person Age of Empire light, in other ways an ARPG with town-building facets, and in another way a mix of a ton of genres that are going to challenge gamers to come up with a fitting explanation of all of this while taking on crazy quests, building up your community, and then saving it, because if anything's eternal, it's the jealousy of others, and their version of stealing it always involves beating it into small pieces and then carrying it off again. Gourd's a solitary journey of strategy and adventure. The key to survival rests in building up your city and your tribe, and then going out and Amazon foresting the area around your city. But it's not all smash and grabs. You also get to take on quests, manage the city, and decide what goes where. Everybody likes a leader who shows up randomly and orders people around, and that's you. Another way to keep your people safe is to make dark pacts with evil spiritual beings, and Gourd has a bit of everything, with that ability for you to dive into the dark myths of Slavic lore if you want to, and join up with some evil creatures. Maintaining a healthy population is crucial for survival in the game, and every facet of your settler's life, from sickness to starvation to the loss of loved ones, can actually affect their sanity levels, and we don't quite know exactly what happens when somebody goes crazy in a medieval city. Gourd's entire focus seems to be on that desire of a leader to make a place for his people, regardless of what that may or may not mean for the far future, and it looks awesome for that. The bigger you build, the more badasses seem to come and try to take your stuff, and that shifting of the gameplay loop between the two halves seems to be Gourd's claim to fame. But it's going to actually be capturing that success that's ultimately really going to come down to if the game can merge the feeling of these two different extremes and not feel like two executables being launched on the same Windows platform. Gourd's trying to do a great deal, and the initial previews have played a bit like slideshows in the performance. But if the developer can lock it down before the August release time frame, that's awesome. Something about Gourd makes people really just want to see it do good, even if that's because in the game you can always be so damned bad. Speaking of bad, or maybe not, number 2, Stray Gods. So, if you've ever woken up and think, man, you know what I've been missing? A Telltale-style musical. That's just what I want. This might be the game for you. Powered by the almost supernaturally talented Austin Wintory and his magic and music, the game Stray Gods is, well, just like I said, a Telltale-style narrative musical. You are Grace, living in a world where humans and Greek gods have a somewhat secret coexistence. And despite the lofty situation you're leading, Grace goes through a normal life, at least at first, trying to navigate a world that's pretty insane in its setup if you think about it, but grounded by singing. In no way does that sound normal, but here we are. It's penned by David Gator, and it claims to be an urban fantasy narrative about self-discovery, seizing control of your destiny, and unearthing truths about, most likely, these gods. It's all sort of mysterious so far, but the idea of a bunch of voice actors in an idol-like battle for the main character's heart seems pretty wicked, even if it falls flat. The art style is definitely more on the lack of animation side, actually less Telltale, and even more of an animated comic book. I don't know if Stray Gods is going to be good, but it could be a blast to experience, or just sort of like the world's worst audition tape hidden as a game. We'll just have to see. Next up, number 3, Atlas Fallen. Atlas Fallen is that upcoming action role-playing video game developed by Deck 13 Interactive and published by Focus I've covered before. It's set to be released for Windows, PlayStation 5, Xbox, and all of those systems, just no Switch. Now, I've done a preview on this, and you can see that on the channel. The game is a hub-based third-person action-adventure game, and it combines a lot of different genres. The story revolves around this ancient sun god who extracts life from the planet's inhabitants and the world through a series of rituals. The protagonist is a character who discovers this mysterious gauntlet, decides to break away from the current factions, and return to the land to the people by killing all the bad guys. It's full co-op if you want it to be, and it's a combat action RPG at its very core, with trappings that can remind you of Destiny and sometimes even Darksiders. As you take your hero out, a common man who, as I said, is chosen to rebel against the evil god, you can learn magic on your own. You're going to take the battle to the bad guys, but first you need to fight off an entire fantasy novel of monsters. It's got a bit of Monster Hunter wrapped up in here as well, because you can target enemies' bodies to break parts off of them. The game uses a momentum system that has you forced to perform attacks, which then power up the special moves that you've equipped from a collection of magic stones you gather. Think of it a bit like the Infinity Gauntlet, with each stone needing a bit of fist-to-face energy before it can then be turned on. It has a pretty wicked traversal mechanic as well, with you able to control the sands of this massive desert planet so that you can travel across them at breakneck speed. I hope one of the skills allows you to grab an enemy and put his head down at 60 miles per hour across the sandpaper earth, just to sort of leave the dunes looking like a tomato-painted Jackson Pollock. What I have played of Atlas Fallen so far, though, the combat is pretty dialed in. If the story and the exploration can deliver even a small sliver of what the devs have decided to give us in prior titles like The Surge, I think we're in good shape. Number 4, Shadow Gambit, A Cursed Crew, August 17th. It's Deck 13. They offer a unique blend of Desperado-style gameplay with pirate-themed settings. The game's set in the Lost Caribbean, where you lead a crew of up to 8 undead pirates against the evil Inquisition, and you've seen this in my previews. As you continue to explore through the world, you gather other crew who have unique weapons and special abilities, such as a bedazzled ship anchor, a sword sheathed in the main character's heart, and a cannon that can shoot other characters across the map. All stuff I've talked about in the actual preview. Each mission begins with you setting up your crew, Ocean's 11 style, and then choosing a starting point on the island. And each island has a ton of missions, with each crew member having their own advantages and disadvantages that actually adjust the way each level plays. The game also features a very unique dying duration mechanic, or at least killing duration mechanic. It indicates how long a death animation is actually going to last on an enemy. This is very useful when you're trying to pull off stealth kills, either solo or as a combo, something that this game actually allows for you to do. Also, at the end of every mission, it tracks everything you do, and it provides you an overview and allows you to watch in time with what you did and shows you every skill you used in different parts of the mission. It's a very cool way of doing things, and again, sort of focuses it on that Ocean's 11 pirate game. I can admit, when it comes to previews and hands-on, Shadow Gambit is probably one of the most enjoyable games in that form that I've played. The freedom is setting up the team. They're very unique moves, which makes each one of them impact that entire mission as well as locations. And it's fed into a really good gameplay loop. But seriously, the name, they could have called it Dark Debt Tale of the Piratey Group of Guys and Gals, and it would have been more memorable. It's not Returnal or Forspoken, but still. An easy to forget title, but a game that so far from what I played is easily remembered. Number 5, Texas Chainsaw Massacre by Sumo Digital on the 18th. Listen, they said it's based on real events, but that's like saying Game of Thrones is based on real events because it's cold outside sometimes. But you're going to be able to make up your mind soon, because the game, developed by Sumo, is coming out on the 18th. It features co-op, gameplay, and player versus player combat. It is asymmetrical multiplayer, and that game market isn't exactly empty, with some big hitters consistently offering content to the point that a new title is really going to have to offer something dramatically different or a robust and polished initial experience. This game is set in a large open map and includes the Sawyer's family farmhouse and a surrounding area. The victim's objective is, of course, to escape the map, while the Sawyer's family goal is to prevent them from doing so, which of course means killing them. It also has a day and night cycle, and somehow the night is more dangerous than the day. It seems to me that a dude with a chainsaw can see better during the day, but whatever. The victims, who are the survivors in this game, have different abilities that can help them in their escape. For instance, one character can crack a lock without passing a skill test without slowing down, and another is stronger, and one can take more hits, and they all have their upgrade pass. I gotta say, those skills do not sound amazing. Seriously, I want to like the game, but so far the skills and a lot of this makes me really question exactly what they're doing. It feels a little bit more like a Redbox D&D game first adventure. Now, this may be a game where the bad guy is the best part. Who am I kidding? Most of these games, the bad guy is the best part. But here you get to play Leatherface, ripping around the levels, looking for lasses and lads to cut into pieces. There's also two other bad guys, a slow one and a fast one. One who can set traps and one who can track the victims faster. You may think that on lists like this, I'm always about the games that are going to be good or that I think are for sure going to be well received. Sometimes it's also about a game that I'm absolutely puzzled about, one that's mysterious to me, and I want to see how it's received. And I can say Texas Chainsaw Massacre is for sure one of those. Like, what the hell were they thinking? And is it actually good? And how does it work to play off its potential? Number 6, Fort Solis. Now, this is described as an intense narrative thriller on Mars, claustrophobic exploration, nerve-wracking set pieces, and a deep plot. It all comes out on August 22nd. Fort Solis, to me, I'm a sucker for the rescue mission kind of game, and that's solidly where this title sits. You play as Jack, dispatched to a remote mining base in response to an unusual alarm. I think you're all thinking what I'm thinking. It's like sending somebody to rescue a friggin' cruise ship lost in the ocean by himself. But it sets the stage for one of the things I've always liked about these games, which is picking apart that mystery and that world prior to my arrival. However, this game actually has a couple things going for it. First, the graphics look amazing, and the voice actors are led by the infinitely talented Roger Clark, who's Arthur Morgan in Red Dead 2. And it also has Julie Brown from the Last Kingdom series. The game's acting chops are on point. Also, I think Troy Baker's in there somewhere. An additional facet to this sort of fascinates me is the layout of the game. It's above and below ground, and it adds to that game's intrigue when it comes to how those locations are going to be handled, the subsurface or the above surface layers. Players get to explore the storm-ridden surface, navigate through pitch-black service tunnels, or visit the various departments that keep Fort Solis operational, such as engineering, medical, and communications. At least that's what the Steam page said. To me, what that really just means is all of the typical places we always enjoy exploring in these kind of games, and it's all going to come down to the mystery in the story and the gameplay itself when it comes to unearthing what has actually happened. It's also told in chapters that feel somewhat like a TV show, a bit of that Last Time on Alan Wake, but here it's just Jack is back. I think we can assume lots of walk-in puzzles and probably a ton of people recording their last moments of life in their iPod versus actually, saving themselves. Digital death notes aside, I think the game looks tremendous. The atmosphere seems perfect, and we'll just have to see. Will the game be good? I don't know, but it has that Troy Baker guy in it, and he seems okay. Number 7, Immortals of Avium, August 22nd. Let's get it out of the way. It's Call of Duty with Magic users, and that makes sense because coming from Ascendant Studios, an independent venture that's actually founded by Brett Robbins, a AAA creative director who worked on the Call of Duty games, Modern Warfare 3, Advanced Warfare, and that World War II one that really wasn't very good. And his name might as well just be called Val or Meh. But Immortals of Bleh, for all intents and purposes, is a Call of Duty in space, and that's fine with me. That's what the devs thought when they were coming up with its initial idea, and that's what you think when you see these massive Magic users flicky fast flinging fire at one another like amped up Call of Duty players on the last day of a season. I like that. From what I've seen, this actually looks very enjoyable. Set in a militaristic fantasy world, the combat's about that magic, as I said. Casting spells with the sorcerer signs, though, you end up joining up with this magical group of battle mages to save the world, and the changing and use of the magic is what interests me. It's different colored magics for different enemies, each having its own power, but it's a little bit like switching weapons in a Call of Duty game. Short range and mid-ranged and area of effect, though not as nicely tied up in a magical bow like that, it still's going to work for a lot of game players. Where Immortals may succeed is that feeling of speed combined with the differences in the magic. And we've seen it before in other games where they merge these kind of ideas together, but never in a game that's this stunning and with this large of a team backing it. The game's built on Unreal 5, so the biggest spell these guys are going to need to cast is Destroyo Stuttero on the game engine. If it can work, and if the game comes in the way it looks, at least to me overall, I think this is going to be a campaign that's very enjoyable to play. But it's going to be David Blaine level trickery to try to get people to remember that boring ass name. Next up, number 8, Armored Core, Fires of Rubicon. This is August 24th, and looks to be the exact kind of robot action firepower porn that we've all want. Mechs bristling with weapons like a mannequin covered in glue and rolled around the massager section? Check. Sweet mech designs open up armored flower ports, raining down hellfire on enemies? Check. Fast and flicky combat that looks like a mix of Titanfall mech sections? Checkity check. There's enough questionable high firepower here, even on the smaller robots in the game, that it already looks like a blast. The demos, the previews, they've all looked pretty awesome, if a bit lean graphically, but Armored Core 6, as the latest installment from Software, looks to deliver more of a straight-up sequel to the prior games without any of the Dark Souls Bloodborne trappings, and I'm fine with that. There's one place that looks to have some current game traditions. It's in the impact bar that you have to use for some of the attacks, and it feels a bit like it's probably playing off sort of a Sekiro vibe. Basically just a game about firepower and fancy fleet-footed missile fountains. The game's level design also looks pretty intricate and huge, with a focus on verticality. We see that in a lot of the previews. Not only normal pathways, but also your mech's booster pack, and that's something that they've stated is going to be available all the time. There's going to be a lot of vertical movement in this, as well as trying to get angles on a lot of the creatures and, of course, some of the bosses. Combat seems to be fluid, and it carries what I think is a resemblance to a lot of the Armored Core kind of games prior, and really doesn't end up feeling anything like the Dark Souls or Elden Rings, which I'm fine with. It doesn't really make sense that it actually would. One element of this game that I've noticed is that it's the desire to keep this ultra clean aesthetic, and it seems to brush up against the feeling of the interaction being lean, and just a leanness in the texture and model work, like the characters skating over everything, including pipes and wires and anything 3D and grates in the floor, making it feel like you're a bit on a piece of ice. That to me seems connected to the developer wanting to consistently have this clean view for the game player, even sitting back and looking at the usual over-the-top explosions and battle effects that we see in other games of this sort. Here, you have 3-ton pieces of metal slamming into each other at breakneck speed, and they wanted to go with a different look. But I can see some game players looking at this game and thinking, this looks pretty basic or a little bit old. We'll all be able to leap onto the internet and tell everybody else that they're wrong here soon when that comes out. Number 9, Under the Waves, August 29th. You play as Stan. Just Stan. That's it. A professional diver in the North Sea, struggling to overcome some kind of life-changing loss during an extended mission underwater. So you're stuck in sort of this self-imposed solitude and try to figure out the puzzle of what's going on, because what everybody does whenever they're having a bad day is just leap into a submersible and stay by themselves underwater. Yeah. Under the Waves is a narrative-driven exploration game set in the depths of the ocean. It's developed by Parallel Studios, published by Quantic Dream. It's your job to go and investigate what's actually going on. One of the things that I liked right away is this game actually looks like it's not just a solid 1, 2, 3 kind of narrative adventure or even a telltale. You're actually doing different things and solving different puzzles and traveling around, talking to different characters, at least on your walkie-talkie, and exploring the underwater depths. I'm a fan of these kind of games. I'm a fan of the other ones that I've talked about. I try to always give these games their due, because a lot of times when you're playing them, they're just a really good single-off adventure, and they end up being a title that I can jump into, sink into for a week or two, and get really my fill of the game, and get that contained world and narrative delivered to me that I don't need to worry is some kind of a larger world structure or an open world with a ton of different things you have to do or towers you have to unlock. Thanks, Ubisoft. Under the Waves is actually the last of these super interesting games. And as I said before, it doesn't always mean they're going to do well. It just means something about what I've seen grabs me. What grabs you? Legally. 2023, August. What games out there are grabbing you, making you think, you know what, this looks like it might be something worthwhile? Tell me about it in the comments. Subscribe if you like it. Hit the notify all bell. Got a bunch of different stuff. You got more reviews coming from me. There's probably some reviews that have just posted. You can see those in the end title screen here. That's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.